let's talk. I want to bring up one more thing about time travel. Um, Tony had brought something up that reminded me, and I had not done it yesterday. So what's really interesting about time travel versus being in the present trying to create a program. When you're in the present trying to create a program, you are looking at hope, wishful thinking, and fantasy. Because yeah, it's true, we do, but on the movies, not in anywhere else. So you're looking at a crystal ball. You might say, I want to get the Taco Bell workers for $10 and not realize that it's not realistic because you have bias. When you are looking from the present to the future, you have bias. And you don't realize that you've made mistakes until later on, which is why hindsight is always 20/20. Oh, if I had only known then what I know now. And the difference is when you're in the future, looking backwards, you have no bias whatsoever. Zero bias. It's the only time in your life you will not have a bias. And you can ask the tough questions. So for example, if we go with the same example before of the $10 for the Taco Bell workers, here it's wishful thinking, it's trying to make it work, fitting the square peg in the round hole just by making the whole oval and making the square oval, and maybe it'll work and I'll hit it a little harder and all of that. When you're in the future, you look back and you go, was I on drugs? I mean, what was I thinking? And what were the problems and how? Well, because you look at it without bias and you say, nothing makes sense with this. These numbers don't work. The acquisition cost doesn't work. So what did I do at 29? What did I give them? When I went to 39, did I mandate 39 and say, now it's this much? Or did I give them more value for the money? Did I make it silver and then gold and they chose to go up? Did I expire the silver? Did I leave them on there? What was my ascension path that I used? You start asking the dissection questions without any bias whatsoever. Just cold reality. And so it's the clearest view that you can have from the future to the past that you'll ever get. That clarity is not possible in the present looking forward. It just isn't. There's no way you can eliminate bias. So that's the other benefit of time travel is you can eliminate bias 100%. And then the possibilities open up. I came out at 29, but somebody else came out at 49 and had almost everything I did, but they did better PR than I did. They got better name recognition. They had a podcast that pulled more people in, so the price became immaterial, and they crushed me. So do I want to go at 49, and what do I have to do to support that? What did I do to support that? And how did I work that? And did I do the podcast? And did I go on other people's podcasts? And did I build a following that made $49 immaterial to the people who took it because they wanted me? They wanted the brand that I had created. And did I realize that right away out of the gate, or did it take me 3 years to figure that out? And so if you're looking at how that worked, you're looking at it without bias, with total clarity, and you can do all those what ifs and how did that work and how did this work and who did that and what did the critics say? When I polled the people who came to this, what was their response? And what did they like and dislike about it? And what did they suggest for the next time? And how many times did it take me to listen to them? And all these questions, none of which have bias. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So there's another benefit of being in the future, looking back in the past. The other thing is, you can take what-if scenarios as if they actually happened. So whereas you might say, what if I did this? How would it screw it up? You can say, oh, I remember when back 5 years ago I said, what if I do this? And I didn't do it. Well, in this scenario, I did do it. What happened? And you start analyzing it and timelining it out to where you are and seeing the effects of it. So you can do this because you stripped away the bias. There's no wishful thinking, there's no fortune telling, there's no rose-colored lenses. So you can play with it and have fun. Always keep in mind when you're looking back, you want to keep it you want to keep it in a vertical niche. You want to say, I'm looking at it from the critics. I'm looking at it from the acquisition cost. I'm looking at it from customer feedback. I'm looking at it from suppliers, from PR, from social media, from vendors, from friends, from my attendees, from the printer who did this, the web designer who did that. You want to look at it in every little category and niche. You don't want to ever go broadband and say, what happened? Because you can't answer that. You can answer specific questions because what it does is it reframes your mind to look at a specific situation in the past without bias and with the ability to vary it and see how you changed it in the past. Now, did you really change it in the past? No, but in your mind, you can do that now because you have total clarity. So you say, oh, I moved it to here, what happened? Well, now you're taking the benefit of all your experience and imprinting it on that and saying, oh, I moved from 29 to 39, I lost 8%, but I gained 4 months greater persistency. Why? Because I added this tail onto it that they could only get after the 6 months. Because I saw that they fell off at 6 months, I added this tail that was a 4-month deal, a 4-month promotion, and they all stayed on for it. So I took my persistency from 6 months until to 8 3/4. These are the things you can look at without the bias and the what if scenarios. You play them out on a timeline moving toward you, not away from you. And the fact that it's moving toward you from the past to the present gives you clarity. Because we can't answer future tense questions. It's not our wiring. We can only wish and hope and live with a crystal ball. So keep that in mind when you're looking back. It's the only time you look back without any bias whatsoever. Okay? Other comments, feedback, questions? Here's something else to think about. When you're going into the future and looking backwards, it doesn't have to be 5 years. You can take 3 years and get a much tighter view. You can take 1 year and get an extremely tight view because you focus differently from 5 years looking back versus 1 year, and things become much more critical. And the results of the actions you took in the past are much more immediate when you're 1 year in the future versus 3 versus 5. So when I say 5, I'm using that as sort of a house example. You can pick the time period you want to go to. You can slingshot to any period in time up to 5 years, and the museum tour you have can be anywhere from 1 to 5 as well. So whereas you might look at it from a niche and say, what did the critics say from 5 years? You may say, you know what? I don't need to look 5 years back at the critics. I only need to look 1 year back to the critics because I'm concerned with their immediate reaction to my launch, not 5 years ago when it launched. I'm going to be 1 year in the future. I'm only 1 year into the project. The critics killed me on these two different items that are, in the cons section, pros and cons. How did I fix them right away? And did I ever have a problem again in that year? Now you can keep going back if you want and see what else they said. So don't think that 5 years is a stationary point in time that you have to slingshot to. Right. Okay? You can go anywhere you want from 1 to 5.